Yes! Destiny 2's PvP has always had its ups and downs, and it probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think of competitive multiplayer. But nonetheless, it still has a strong presence of uniqueness that separates it from the run-of-the-mill first-person shooter. And as of presently, we're at the tail end of Destiny 2's 10th season, the same season where the famed Trials of Osiris game type made its return from Destiny 1. Originally, it was Trials of the Nine that existed in year 1 of Destiny 2, but was retired by the time the Forsaken DLC released, which kicked off year 2 of Destiny 2. Bungie decided to retire Trials of the Nine due to terrible feedback and also due to the fact that Crucible in year 1 was in a very rough and unsatisfactory state. Now that Trials of Osiris is here, this is the first time since August of 2018 that Trials and the competitive playlist have both coexisted in Destiny 2. For those of you that don't know, the presently known 3v3 survival playlist used to be a 4v4 playlist known as competitive, but had its name changed due to going from an entire playlist consisting of the survival, clash, control, and countdown game types down to just survival when the Shadowkeep DLC launched. However, people still refer to this playlist by its original name, or comp for short. These changes were met with praise from the Destiny community, who also reveled in the fact that the 3v3 survival playlist was introduced alongside a playlist known as Freelance Survival, which only allows you to load in solo. Freelance Survival was something that the Destiny community had been requesting for seemingly forever before it finally happened, due to the fact that not everyone has a reliable fire team, or in some instances, some people don't have a fire team at all. Freelance Survival made it possible for solo players to reach the max glory score of 5,500, which was pretty much impossible before Shadowkeep came out. And if you were around to see the competitive playlist evolve into what it is now, you're fully aware of how brutal it used to be. Season 3 marked the arrival of the Valor and Glory point system, which gave some actual purpose to core and competitive Crucible. Now, after reaching 2,100 glory points, players would receive the Register's Claymore Pulse Rifle, and after 5,500 glory points, you would receive an exclusive ornament for the weapon. Acquisition of Register's Claymore was no longer possible after Season 3 due to the fact that its Year 2 successor, Register's Broadsword, took its place. Obtaining Register's Claymore was a feat of a lifetime, because Bungie confirmed that out of the several million players in Destiny 2, it was only 9,000, or a little bit less than 9,000, that obtained the weapon for themselves. And back in Season 3, losing multiple matches in a row was overly penalizing, because if you did, you would enter what's known as a loss streak, which was capable of bleeding your glory point savings account completely dry. Over the seasons, Bungie tweaked the points gained from winning matches and removed the loss streak mechanic entirely. Thank goodness. Now this right here was one of the best decisions Bungie ever made because engagement for the competitive playlist skyrocketed. To make matters better, the Luna's Howl hand cannon was the new reward for reaching 2,100 glory points, while the Not Forgotten hand cannon was the reward for hitting 5,500 glory points. And back in Season 4, everybody was trying to get their hands on one of, if not both of these incredibly powerful weapons. And as the seasons went on, Bungie would incentivize venturing into the competitive playlist by increasing the amount of points gained from winning matches and going on win streaks, as well as adding single PvP pinnacle weapons to the game that could only be obtained by gaining a certain amount of glory points. Now Season 5, which was the Black Armory era, was the first time that the Unbroken title could be earned, because if you were skilled enough in PvP to reach Glory Rank Legend in the prior 2 seasons, you would have only needed to do it again in Season 5. Any and everybody can tell you how intimidating it was to see somebody don the Unbroken title back then. Anybody who had the Unbroken title at any point during Year 2 went through World Wars 3, 4, 5, 6, and 40, came home from deployment, and shared all their war stories with their hometown. Seriously, people, the Unbroken title at one point in time was the rarest in the game, and only the most elite PvP players had it. The competitive playlist was so sweaty and stressful that people would even go to the extremes of manipulating the game to boost themselves up to 5,500 glory. Now back then, the Not Forgotten hand cannon and the Unbroken title were symbols of prestige, and to some, each of these served as a rite of passage to become an elite PvP player. Fast forward to Year 3 of Destiny 2, kicked off by the Shadowkeep DLC. Again, this is when comp became 3v3 survival, and to most, if not all, of the PvP player base that obtained the Not Forgotten and the Unbroken title, survival was a shadow of its former self due to the obvious fact that it was much easier than what it was in Year 2. Matchmaking was a lot more forgiving in the sense that you wouldn't be matched against the best players in the world all the time, and glory gains were significantly better. On a 5-win streak, you would receive I believe it was around 100 points or something like that after reaching Mythic 3, if my memory serves me right. Now, well-known PvP streamers such as Frostbolt and ZK Mushroom were able to reach 5,500 glory in a single sitting, a feat that was literally impossible in Year 2. This rubbed a lot of the players who ground their way up to Glory Rank Legend in the seasons prior the wrong way, and it was to the extent where many of them felt that those who did it in Season 8 and beyond were undeserving of those particular accomplishments. Now let's talk about Trials. As stated previously, the version of Trials that was present in the first year of Destiny 2 was known as Trials of the Nine. This version of Trials required you to win 7 games in a row without losing, no different than the Trials of Osiris, but it didn't have different passages like Trials of Osiris does. Also, as far as I remember, Trials of the Nine didn't find your opponents based on what match you're on. This means that it was possible for your flawless game to be somebody else's second or third game, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Trials of the Nine wasn't power level based like Trials of Osiris is, so in theory, you could treat it like core PvP and not have to worry about grinding your power level up to compete. Unfortunately, Trials of the Nine existed in the double primary, slow time to kill, team shooting era of Destiny 2 and was basically born to die, so Bungie retired it after Season 3. Now in Season 10, Trials of Osiris returned from Destiny 1, and despite the fact that it hasn't been in the best shape, it's good to know that Trials in some way, shape, or form is back. As I said earlier, the more skilled PvP players have managed to go from 0 to 5,500 glory points in a single play session. Granted, this single play session was about 3+ hours, but it's still 100% possible. But based on how the survival playlist is set up, the grind to reach glory rank legend wasn't designed to be done in a single sitting, because it's expected for this to be an over period of time grind. However, that's where Trials differs, because due to the fact that Trials is only around for the weekends, it's expected for you to win all 7 of your games in a single sitting. A trip to the lighthouse usually takes around an hour or two, but it can be longer if you have one of those super sweaty cars where every match pits you against teams that take you to round 9. Hopefully that isn't happening to you. Now when it comes to the overall difficulty of reaching glory rank legend versus going flawless in Trials, there's multiple things that we have to factor in. For one, are we comparing present day Trials of Osiris to 3v3 survival, or are we comparing present day Trials to the original competitive playlist? If it's the first one, I would have to say that reaching glory rank legend in the 3v3 survival playlist is a lot less difficult than making it to the lighthouse. Now this is because there's significantly less sweat in survival than it was in comp, and the glory gains are much more rewarding, as I said earlier. And ever since the 3v3 survival playlist came into existence, the players within the average to above average skill bracket found themselves to be a lot more successful than what they were before Season 8. But if we're comparing Destiny 2's present day Trials of Osiris to the original comp playlist, then there's no doubt about it that making it to the lighthouse would be the less difficult route, especially if we're talking about the Season 3 days where the lost streak mechanic existed. Anybody who made it to glory rank legend in Season 3 is undoubtedly beyond the upper echelon of what a skilled PvP player is. Even after comp was made easier in Seasons 4 and beyond, it was still incredibly difficult to hit legend rank because the PvP sandbox was in complete disarray. Supers were entirely too powerful because 5 super mods could get you your super back in about 2 minutes or so, and Roman supers had ridiculous damage resistance, so it was basically impossible to challenge them unless you did so with a super of your own, a heavy weapon, or team shots. I don't even think it was a common occurrence to snipe people out of their super back then like it is right now, because that's just how ridiculous the damage resistance of supers were. Also, let's not forget how Not Forgotten was a 180 RPM hand cannon that could reliably 2-tap and was only owned by the, at the time, most skilled PvP players. So yeah, PvP in year 2 had so many overpowered things running rampant at the same time, and I wouldn't step foot into Trials if we took all of the overpowered nonsense from year 2 and applied it to the current PvP sandbox in year 3. Man, I'm getting nightmares thinking about it, and I'm still awake. But yeah, since comparing the old comp to Trials isn't really fair, since most if not all the factors that made the old comp as difficult as it was are no longer applicable today, we'll just compare Trials to survival, and as stated previously, I would say that reaching a lighthouse in Trials is more difficult than reaching glory rank legend. Now Trials is even less engaging as of presently because the player pool is incredibly small due to the lack of incentive of going flawless and playing Trials as a whole. Unlike Trials in Destiny 1, there are no adept weapons, flawless vigil ornaments, or anything amazing that comes from it, and as this became evident to the player base, the player pool of Trials got smaller and smaller as the weeks bypassed. And nowadays, it's a common occurrence for people to obtain a flawless seal and just quit playing Trials as a whole. And while we're on the subject of seals, let's talk about the triumph seals that can only be unlocked from playing Trials and survival. Now we already briefly discussed the Unbroken seal, but in order to attain this seal, you gotta reach glory rank legend in 3 separate seasons. Of course, there are also other various triumphs such as earning the Crucible Pinnacle weapons and resetting your Valor rank, but all of these come over time and aren't triumphs that you really have to go out of your way for. Now when it comes to the Trials triumph seal, this one is known as flawless, and it only has 5 triumphs compared to the 10 triumphs for Unbroken. Okay, so we established that reaching glory rank legend will be less difficult than making it to the lighthouse, so I suppose it is safe to say that we can use that as the foundation for the next question. What's harder to obtain, the Unbroken seal or the flawless seal? Alright, so I stated earlier that the flawless seal has only 5 triumphs. Now it's been stated that 3 out of these 5 triumphs will have their progress reset every season. These triumphs consist of Guardian of the Lighthouse, which requires you to win 10 matches on a ticket with 7 wins on it. This is the Way, which requires you to go flawless on 4 different maps in a single season, and Confidence is High, which requires you to complete a flawless Passes of Confidence. Now if you weren't already aware, the Passes of Confidence can only be obtained if you've been flawless on that week and on that character only. So for instance, if I was to go flawless on my Warlock this week and only on my Warlock, I wouldn't be able to pick up the Confidence Passes on my other 2 characters, unless I went flawless on those characters too. One thing that makes the Confidence Passes so annoying is that there's literally no room for forgiveness. You literally have to win 7 games without ever losing, whereas the Passes of Mercy gives gives you a second chance if you lose. Guardian of the Lighthouse isn't too bad because the card with 7 wins on it doesn't have to be a flawless card, as far as I'm concerned. It can still have losses on it, and you'll still get triumph progress. And when it comes to the This Is the Way triumph, this one will happen naturally provided that you're playing with a competent team every week. The Trials of Osiris, Veteran Disciple, only requires you to complete the Trials of Osiris Collections badge, consisting of all the weapons and armor from Trials. The Trials exclusive Ghost and Sparrow aren't a part of this. Safe Harbor requires you to make it to the Lighthouse with somebody on your fire team on an account who has never been to the Lighthouse before. I specifically said an account who has never been flawless before, because it's a common occurrence for people to get on a Recov account to complete this triumph. Now luckily, Safe Harbor and Veteran Disciple are the triumphs that don't reset every season, but the fact that any of the triumphs reset at all makes the flawless seal pretty difficult, since you will never be able to attain it if you aren't making it to the Lighthouse consistently. Despite the fact that the Unbroken title is time gated, it's still something you can work on at your own pace. You're required to hit Glory Rank Legend in 3 separate seasons, but if it was 3 seasons in a row, it will be significantly more difficult because you wouldn't be able to take long breaks from the game without having your progress reset. And speaking of which, that's one of the main superlatives of Unbroken in comparison to Flawless, because due to the fact that Unbroken's triumphs don't reset, there's no sense of urgency in regards to completing them. You can take your time and don't have to worry about stressing out about it and not being able to complete the seal. And with all this factored in, it's more than safe to say that the Flawless seal is significantly more demanding than Unbroken is. And by no means am I saying that Unbroken is a pushover title, because it isn't. It may not be as difficult to attain as it used to be, but it still requires you to grind and have some sort of PvP aptitude. As of now, Unbroken is a symbol of investment in the sense that it's a reward for those who remain committed to the PvP grind. But back in year 2, it would instantly denote that the person wearing it was a complete savage in PvP. Well everybody, that does it for this one. In the comment section, tell me if you prefer the Unbroken title or the Flawless title. If you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor and thumb right to that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.